Okay, so I want to talk about the nature of reality. What is actually happening? Previously we had gone through the conspiracy levels and talked about, the events were unfolding. How do we figure out where we're at on this really bizarre scale, and what do we do about it? The nature of reality kind of correlates to that. This is more so like, how is the game played at that level? I think the most basic form of reality is this physical reality that we're in. You can feel your surroundings, everything feels and looks physical. It clearly is the default state. And the kind of the story that we've been told about this default state is that we've evolved from chimps. We're living in this meaningless universe. We will die and everything will disappear, and that's it. That's game over. And that we can also see how the power dynamics work at this level of the game. It's really through violence and military force, right? That's why we have armies. That's why we have wars, because at the end of the day, you can just walk in physically and take what you want. So that's basically that level of reality that we're all very familiar with, right? I think everybody's here. Again, you can see that the background here is green. I think that very little argument about this level of reality. I think this is just kind of the default state. Then we get into the next level of reality, which is a psychological reality. Now, this one, again, is green. I think this is pretty straightforward. Most of us agree. Not only are we evolved from chimps and we're just physical machines, but there's also like this psychological component, this, intelligence or emotional intelligence, IQ, EQ dynamic that allows certain people to perform at a higher level than other people. So when we're talking about that, that's where we will get into things like great men or great women, people that can, really exceed and excel and become famous or change the world, whatever the case may be, right? And this level seems to be played on kind of a political level through kind of mass psychology and getting people to come out and vote for you. It's not good enough just to be smart. You also need to be likable. If you don't have the combination of both, really you're kind of capped in your career. So you really have to have a lot of psychological techniques to operate on this level. But if you do, you can distinguish or differentiate yourself from maybe you start out poor and you end up rich. How did you do that? It wasn't just by like being an automaton marching through life, right? You had to use tricks and tactics and techniques to rise through those ranks. And so that's the psychological reality. All right, so the next level of reality is what I would call metaphysical, or possibly a psychic reality. And this one's yellow because I think a lot of people believe in this, and a lot of people maybe don't believe in this, or are less a little bit skeptical of this. So this is kind of the divide between religion and atheism, at least like a secular materialist atheism. And so what is going on here? Well, I think at this level, what we start to see is a little bit of interdimensionality pop out. So, there's a belief that there's some basic types of spirits. There might be angels and demons. You might have some spiritual abilities. You might be able to pray for people, stuff like that, right? So all of a sudden, it becomes more than just our immediate physical surroundings. It's more than just my physical force or my ability to outsmart you. It's really, there's some kind of interaction with a larger spiritual force around us that we're not necessarily strictly aware of, but we can kind of sense it and, operate in that world in some way. And I think one of the things that happens at this level is that we surpass the political level and we get into what I would call the money level. Now, money, when you think about money, it's really just a game, right? It's a piece of paper, and we've all agreed that, yes, this paper has value. And what we're doing is we're saying this paper represents potential energy. So in physics, you've got kinetic and potential energy. Kinetic energy is energy it's like me pushing in a tug-of-war match, right? Me pulling, that's kinetic energy. But if I'm just chilling, eating an apple and getting ready for the match, that's potential energy. I'm fueling up with calories and stuff like that, right? So money is also potential energy. It's kind of this medium where I can go and specialize at a particular job and get my dollars per hour rate higher, so that I can kind of accumulate a lot of energy in one area without having to, I don't have to go cut down all the trees and, cut them into wood and then build my own house and do my own plumbing. I don't have to do all those things. Instead, I can specialize. I can generate a lot of energy in one area, and then I can exchange that energy with other people, and I can purchase somebody else's time and skill to come in. And actually, in a way, it's like magic. I'm controlling that person, right? I give them $1,000, and they come in and they cut down the trees for me. well, that's amazing. I didn't have to do anything. I was actually, it's like voodoo magic. It's really pretty interesting when you think about it. So at this level, we're already into this kind of a metaphysical level where we're all agreeing that something that is not strictly real is real. We're all playing this game. And so really the battle here is around economic policy, around trade, around kind of these higher level concepts. And then you can use that money to push down and purchase politicians, right? And to influence decisions at the lower levels. You can buy yourself an army. You can buy yourself politicians with enough money. So this really tends to trump the lower levels, but obviously it's built on top of them. All right, so the next level we get into is actually what I would call a multidimensional or a paranormal level. Now, I, until recently, didn't really study this at all. I don't know how it works, except that I've noticed that there is a huge, an unbelievable amount of research on this level. And so just recently I've been getting into it and realizing, wow, there's a lot here. The shocking amount of information, very good information that I was not expecting because it's so kind of ridiculed in popular opinion. Also, you'll notice that this is red, so I think that the vast majority of us are a little bit more skeptical of this level. We might be open to hearing about it, we might be interested in it to some extent, but I think that our knowledge level is very low about it, and I just don't think that we take it that seriously. But I do think that this is one of the levels. This is, going from the traditional, like a spiritual or a metaphysical level where we might think, oh, there's aliens and demons. All of a sudden we get into, in the multidimensional level, we get into this really advanced ecosystem with bunch of different kinds of aliens and different abilities and the ability to astral travel, for example, or all of these different kind of systems, and it gets very complex. It can be a little bit overwhelming. It also makes a little bit more sense, honestly, that reality would be more complex, not less complex. I mean, if we just look around our physical environment, there's so much complexity. If you go to a university and say, I want a 4-year degree, look at that humongous list of things that you can specialize in, right? So it would make more sense to me, actually. It would be more consistent with our reality if the multidimensional reality was also very complex and not simple at all. At this level, what we get into is kind of an information level. So whereas the metaphysical level is really more about money and exchange and currency and playing this mental game with each other, the multidimensional level is really about controlling access to information, because you can't do something unless you know about it, right? You can't travel to a different place if you don't know that place exists. You can't think a certain way or do a certain thing if you don't know that it's possible. And so controlling people's awareness of the world around them is really the game here. That's how you control behavior at a very high level. And part of that is through things like science or technology. You can see that as science, for example, Einstein. Think about, most of us have heard about Einstein's story. And just think about these guys. Back in the day, they didn't have advanced computers. They didn't really have much. They were conducting experiments in a lab, like with physical, like chemistry. They were combining elements and just trying to see what happened and watching those patterns and trying to figure out, like, what are the connections, what are the relationships here. And they would take that and they would develop theories about how things worked, and then they would build technologies on top of that, right? So that's a very complex level. They're delving into the nature of reality and expanding their information through trial and error. And so that's kind of this, it's a very important level, but it gets extremely complex. And it's really all about controlling information. I would say, why do we not know more about aliens? Is it because it's a total joke? Or is it because we just haven't been exposed to any of that information? And if we haven't, why haven't we? Now, the last level of reality is what I would call a holographic reality, or a mystical kind of reality. And again, we get into this one has no background color because I don't think it's really on the radar of most people. And I also believe that this is, I believe, again, all of these levels are true, and this is kind of the top dog level. So when you start digging into ancient history and looking at what's happening in the world, what you'll see is that everything kind of coalesces in a way where it's touching on this level of holographic reality. And by holographic, what I mean is it's all of the spiritual concepts. It's all of the esoteric knowledge that seems kind of strange. It's this concept of magic or ritual or all these things that we have not been exposed to very much in our modern life. And yet, if you look at history, it's just full of it. You know, if you look at all these statues and the ancient Roman and Greek gods and all of these different things, Freemasonry, all of these things, all of a sudden you start to see that there is a pattern to these things, and that pattern kind of transcends just the religious and actually transcends the multidimensional, the kind of the alien reality, and speaks about something that's much, much deeper than all of these things. And so I want to kind of walk us through what that is as well.